MSW Media.
The rule of law is not just some lawyer's turn of phrase. It is the very foundation of our democracy. The essence of the rule of law is that like cases are treated alike. That there not be one rule for Democrats and another for Republicans, one rule for the powerful, another for the powerless, one rule for the rich and another for the poor, or different rules depending upon one's race or ethnicity. To serve as Attorney General at this critical time is a calling I am honored and eager to answer.
So now it's clean up on aisle 45 time. And for a long while yet, it is going to be clean up on aisle 45.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 178 of Clean Up on Aisle 45. It's Wednesday, June 19th. Happy Juneteenth. I'm Allison Gill.
And I'm Pete Struck. We have a lot of news to cover on cleanup today, including DA Fani Willis seeking to dismiss Trump's appeal over the decision not to remove her from the case, a Trump lawyer stripped from a Judicial Advisory Commission in Wisconsin, and a voter data breach co-conspirator in Michigan has flipped on poor Stephanie Lambert.
Oh, that's too bad. Stephanie Lambert, what a weird story. I can't wait to get to that. Also, we have updates on Rudy and Steve Bannon. Nancy Mace is under investigation at the House Ethics Committee, and the House Ethics Committee's investigation into Matt Gaetz has expanded to include potential bribery, what the DOJ was originally looking into. We could talk about that. And there's questions about whether Trump can own the firearm he's admitted to having in Florida. But first, we have some new patrons to thank. Thank you so much to Allison Hartman, Elizabeth, Melissa, Dominika Gazarowski, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Maybe Gaziarowski? Could be. Ellen, Michael Kelly, Susan Simmons, Adria Coletti, and Kathleen Carney. Thank you so very much for being patrons. We could not do this show without you. There's tons of production costs. And of course, we love to have, our galas and meet and greets, and you get VIP ticket pre-sales to live shows and things like that. But we couldn't do any of this without you. So thank you for supporting independent media. If you want to become a patron, you can do it for as little as $1 an episode. You can do that at patreon.com/aisle45pod. That's AISLE 45POD. Hey, Pete, where should we start today?
Let's go down to Georgia in Fulton County, where Fani Willis is trying to dismiss the appeal of Judge McAfee's ruling that she can stay on the case if Nathan Wade stepped aside, which he did. This is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. In a motion, prosecutor Donald Wakeford said the appeal should be rejected because it was, quote, improvidently granted due to the lack of sufficient evidence, unquote. Moreover, in his March 15 order allowing Willis to remain on the case, Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee made what he called explicit factual findings to support his decision, in which cannot be disturbed by an appellate court unless they were flatly incorrect, Wakefield wrote. The Georgia Court of Appeals decision on May 8 to hear the case all but stopped court proceedings involving Trump and the 8 other defendants who joined the challenge. The court cemented that by recently staying proceedings against all those 9 defendants. The Willis saga began in January when a lawyer for defendant Mike Roman, a former Trump campaign official, filed a motion contending Willis and her office should be disqualified because of her romantic involvement with Nathan Wade, the special prosecutor she had appointed. Her office had paid Wade more than $700,000 in legal fees. The defense motion said Willis was benefiting financially from the case because Wade had paid for their trips to the Caribbean and Napa Valley. Other defense motions followed, saying Willis should be disqualified for giving highly prejudicial and inappropriate remarks during a church speech on Dr. Martin Luther King weekend. McAfee determined that while Willis had a lapse in judgment and made bad decisions, her conduct did not amount to a disqualifying conflict of interest. Instead, there was the appearance of a conflict that required either Willis's or Wade's removal from the case. That same day, Wade withdrew.
Yeah, and it seems like perhaps if Wade didn't withdraw, then an appeal would be appropriate here. But I think what Willis is getting at, or at least what I'm, from my understanding of the DA's filing, is that, hey, we remedied the problem. There's nothing to appeal. So in his motion Wednesday, Wakeford said that after holding a multi-day hearing, McAfee determined the evidence didn't support the defense claims that Willis financially benefited from the case. So that's not at issue. McAfee's, quote, frank appraisal of the DA's testimony was that it withstood scrutiny. And the judge accepted her explanations that she split the costs of the vacations with Wade by reimbursing him with cash. And I get all that, but I think probably the point of an appeal is that what Trump is trying to say, or Trump and his co-defendants are trying to say, is the judge's ruling was wrong. There was impropriety. She didn't reimburse him, something like that. But I think that the evidence is kind of clear here. We'll see what happens. But in like you said, in his order, the judge said that the odor of mendacity remains, but the DA argues that that was remedied when Wade stepped aside. McAfee also found Willis's remarks during her church speech were legally improper. But Wakeford noted that the judge found that the remarks did not cross the line because Willis did not name a defendant, did not disclose confidential information, and did not address the merits of the case to the public. So because there's no grounds for the appeals court to reverse McAfee's decision, there's no reason for the court to hear the appeal. That's what Wakeford is contending from the DA's office. In a statement, Trump's lead attorney, Steve Sato, criticized the DA's request, calling it, quote, a last-ditch effort to stop any appellate review of DA Willis's misconduct. And that's really telling, because an appellate review shouldn't be over Willis's quote-unquote misconduct. An appellate review should be over a judge's decision, McAfee's decision. So the issue is now pending before Judges Trenton Brown, Todd Markle, and Benjamin Land, although it's possible the full court could eventually weigh in on the motion. So what do you think of this, and what do you think of Nathan Wade agreeing to do an interview a sit-down one-on-one interview with Caitlin Collins?
Well, the last thing, don't talk. Stop. Well, I don't care if you're Nathan Wade or Michael Cohen or Stormy Daniels. If you are involved in pending in any way, as a witness, as a prosecutor, if you're involved in pending litigation, the best advice that 99.99% of attorneys out there won't recommend to you is don't talk. Don't give an interview. Don't say anything, because the chances of saying something which can be used in an adverse way or against you, or you might misspeak or get some facts wrong or misremember something, there are just too many spots that you can get a case in trouble. And so I wish, look, I get his impulse. I get the desire to say, hey, this is all nonsense, and Fani Willis, did nothing wrong, and, our business is our personal business. And I get that. I understand that. But it's one of those circumstances where you get out of this, she's still leading the prosecution. Bite your tongue as long as it takes. And it may take, unfortunately, a long time. But, at least watching that and reading some of the analysis of what he said, particularly from good attorneys covering the Atlanta and Georgia legal scene, that he didn't make any horrible missteps. But man, oh man, that's, you don't need to put yourself in that position, in my opinion. And this motion, I don't know, whether or not, whatever the 3-judge panel says, whoever's on the losing side, I am willing to bet will ask for the full court to weigh in. I don't know the timetable and how long that'll take, and whether, they remand it and say, or no, there's nothing here. But it's clear, I don't think so much or read so much about the words that the Trump attorneys put on paper, so much as the things that they're doing just to slow it down. It may be completely without merit, but it can be filed and have a hearing heard. And so that's what they're doing, just to try and kick this down the road, keep all of this evidence and the trial out of the public awareness until after the election at a minimum.
Yeah. And I think it was Tamar Hallerman for Atlanta Journal-Constitution who said that there's a limited time for the appellate court to review cases. In Georgia, they have 2 terms to do it, which means they have until March of 2025. to decide this case. And it's one of the busiest dockets in the nation. 2,500 cases a year, I believe, is what she quoted. And of course, this is off the top of my head. If I'm misquoting anything, please write into us and let us know. Send us a correction. But I don't see, hats off to the DA's office for filing this motion to dismiss the appeal. You kind of have to. It makes sense. But I don't think the appellate court would have granted the certificate of appeal, nor do I think McAfee would have granted the certificate of appeal to go to the appeals court. And like I said, I don't think the appellate court would have taken the case if they thought that it wasn't an appealable case to be heard, So I think it will take a long time. I don't think it might not take until the outside date of March 25th, but for sure, this case isn't going anywhere close to trial until next year, well after the election. So, again, I understand the idea behind the motion, and it's really well written, and it makes sense to me, but I'm not sure they're going to be successful on it.
Yeah, I don't either. I just, again, success is, in some contexts, success is just slowing things down. Success is pouring sand in the gears. And, from that angle, from that perspective, this is not it's not a waste of effort on Trump's part to, just grind things to a halt like he's doing in Florida, like he's doing in D.C., like he tried to do in Manhattan.
And attention, Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin, Mike Roman is watching you. So be careful. That's all I'm saying. Just like he is watching you. He is a dirt digger, he is a bad dude. He's got PIs. He will, if in 1986 you said you called your mom the B word, he will find out and he will bring a case against you. So just, be aware. Mike Roman is watching you on behalf of Donald Trump and all of his co-defendants. All right, we have a lot more news to get to, including, we're going to talk about Michigan, but we do have to take a quick break. So everybody, stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, welcome back. We have more patrons to thank, including happy supporters Don and Ann, Robert Krotz, Christina Kaplan, Chelsea White, Natalie S. Ingen, Sarah O. Davis, Jean Morrison, Jonathan Krafchick, and Deidre Clark. Thank all of you so much. Thank you for helping this program, for being part of the team. Absolutely appreciate your support, and thank you so much.
Yes, truly couldn't do it without you. So let's head to Michigan because there's a lot going on. You'll recall there was a voter data breach case there, separate from the fraudulent elector case and separate from the voter machine breach. There's a lot going on, but the voter data breach involved the two Stephanies, right? Trump world lawyer Stephanie Lambert and the township clerk Stephanie Scott. Now, as a reminder, Stephanie Lambert had to have a bench warrant issued for her arrest because she failed to appear at a hearing in Michigan, but she was nabbed by the U.S. Marshals in D.C. in court, where she made an appearance to represent the former Overstock CEO and Maria Butina honeypot fly Patrick Byrne. So
how does that, if you're sitting in court and you've got to go through the procedural motions and you're sitting there and you're done and the judge all rise, the judge walks out, you're getting ready, you're walking out of the court with your attorney and you're getting ready to ask him a couple of questions. All of a sudden the marshals come up and put the grabs on him. I can't get my head around this.
Well, there is a dearth of lawyers in Trump world right now. They've all got their licenses suspended, most of them at least, and there just aren't that many. Stanley Woodward has like 900 clients right now, including many capital insurrectionists, and of course Waltine Nauta and multiple other. Pete Navarro is one of his clients, so he's probably too busy.
Would you say it is the opposite of a plethora?
You do not have a plethora of attorneys in Trump world. No, yes, it's the opposite of a plethora.
See, Happy.
Anytime
it's the opposite. It is a dearth.
Anytime we can bring the three amigos into the discussion, it's always a win. It's always a win. It's a sweater. Okay. There's also a guy in this saga named Ben Cotton, who was a so-called election fraud expert that investigated fraud on behalf of Trump in several states. Well, he's been granted immunity to spill the beans on Stephanie Lambert and Stephanie Scott. And this is from Detroit News. Cotton, who was described in court as a Montana resident, was present Wednesday morning inside the building that houses Hillsdale County's district courtroom as preliminary examinations for attorney Stephanie Lambert and former Adams Township clerk Stephanie Scott were scheduled to take place. He's here, said Richard Cunningham of Michigan Attorney General's office about Cotton at one point, pointing at him. He's in this building right now. However, Cotton did not end up testifying Wednesday after Judge Megan Stiverson delayed the preliminary exam to consider a series of arguments, including a motion to quash the charges from lawyer Dan Hartman, who's representing Lambert and Scott. So this is a big tangled web.
Yeah, and so starting with Cotton, Cotton analyzed voting data or equipment in Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona, and was a prominent figure in a movement that spread conspiracy theories about the 2020 presidential election. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel announced in May that her office was charging Lambert with 3 felonies and Scott with 5 felonies after Lambert allegedly transmitted data from the Adams Township electronic poll book, which features personal information on eligible voters, doing that under Scott's direction. Lambert provided the data to Cotton so he could conduct a quote-unquote examination, Nessel's office has said. Hartman has described Cotton as an investigator, an expert who was working with Lambert. Quote, he's still a trusted member of the defense team, unquote, Hartman said of Cotton, according to a transcript of a hearing that occurred last week.
So he's part of the Crazy Times Carnival audit in Arizona?
Yes, and
this guy?
Right, the gang that couldn't shoot straight, right? Cotton's testimony could be key for prosecutors in the Hillsdale County cases, but he could also play a role in separate charges brought by a special prosecutor in Oakland County, also in Michigan. In Oakland County, Lambert, also in plus, former Attorney General candidate Matt DePerno and former state Matt DePerno. DePerno is one of these, again, the gang that could not shoot straight, and former state representative Dare Rendon faced criminal charges for allegedly being part of a scheme to gain improper access to voting machines used in the 2020 election, and have experts, which include Cotton, analyze the equipment. At a hearing last week, according to a transcript, Cunningham said he saw, quote, no basis for criminal charges, unquote, against Cotton, but Cotton's lawyer had indicated if called as a witness, he would cite the Fifth Amendment and exercise his right to remain silent. Now, granting immunity to Cotton would prevent him from using the Fifth Amendment's protections, Cunningham said, according to the transcript, which is common. You grant somebody immunity so that you can compel them to provide testimony, and it can't be used against them, but you can, compel them to show up in the grand jury or the Michigan state equivalent of that to provide testimony. Now, the preliminary exams for Lambert and Scott coming up soon, less than a month, beginning on July 11th.
Oh, July 11th. That'll be a fun day. That's sentencing for Donald Trump. Just 4 days before the RNC. And I'll be live with, I think, Dana and Andy McCabe in Seattle.
Nice.
That'll be a fun day.
And we'll probably also, at that point, have a inmate number for Stephen Bannon as well.
Yeah. We're going to talk about his fun trip. He doesn't get to stay at Club Fed. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But walk me through this. If somebody pleads the Fifth and then is given immunity and then still won't give the information they have, what happens? Do they hold him in contempt? Do they jail him until they talk?
In the federal system, that is an option. I don't know what the Michigan state law provides for, but federally, yeah, if you immunize somebody and you move to compel it, if it's a grand jury testimony and they refuse to provide it, you can seek to hold them in contempt and seek sanctions if they continue to hold out. But I don't know what Michigan. I mean, and I think we have some listeners who are. We've met them at the virtual cocktail hours, some Michigan attorneys. So listeners out there, if you've got some insight into what Michigan law provides for, drop us a line and we'll plug it into, we'll give you the answer next time.
Yeah, because I mean, I just imagine like what, you give somebody immunity and they didn't want to testify in the first place. What if they don't, I know in like you said, for feds, what can happen, but if you're just like, no, I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the general legal idea from Supreme Court precedent is that the grand jury, every man is entitled to the best evidence that's there. So if there is a person, a citizen who has information about an alleged crime, that it is, they can be compelled to provide it. Now, they can't be compelled to like overcome their right to not incriminate themselves, which is, the Fifth Amendment, right? But if the government, if the prosecutors waive prosecuting them, then the onus goes back to the person who's been given the immunity to do their duty as a citizen to provide that information. And I think that's kind of like fundamental law that applies regardless of the state, but I don't know the ins and outs of Michigan state law.
No, me neither. Seems to stand to reason, though, because I mean, I doubt you'd be able to just be like, no, I'm not going to say, and get away with it. It doesn't seem like something that's very feasible. But it's pretty amazing to me, Pete, that we have so many cases going on in parallel in Michigan. We have the voter data breach, which is what we were just talking about. But she's also involved in a voting machine plot. This sounds like, do you remember when Donald Trump paid $1.5 million to have 2 research firms go out and look into voter fraud? But they were legitimate research firms, and they were like, there are none.
Yeah,
then it seems like
there.
he sent out the Patrick Byrne plantation posse.
It's like, okay, the pros, I know I didn't get this for $1.5 million, but what might I get for $22,000?
Right.
Is there a discount? If I go to the Five and Dime, if I go to the Dollar Tree, what can I get there for an answer?
Temu and Wish have looked into your voter fraud, and here's what they found. That's what it feels like happens here. Legitimate, the DOJ wouldn't do it, right? He tried to get Jeffrey Clark in there to get an attorney general who would, but even BJ Pack was like, no, dude, and Barr was like, no, I'll go on TV and lie and say that mail-in voting is rife with fraud, but I'm not. That there's nothing here to investigate, or we have it. They actually did investigate and found nothing. Told him several times. So then he hires a couple of voter fraud research firms, and they were like, "Nah, we didn't find anything." So now he sends out Patrick Byrne and the Pillow Man and his little weird army of 4 Seasons total landscaping experts to head out, hit the road, and steal voter data. And you remember in Mike Lindell's symposium, there was a guy who got a bunch of voter data and he was showing it on the screen. And while he was on stage or via Zoom at this symposium, he gets a call from his lawyer and says, "Huh, I gotta go," and shut down and drop the call.
And speaking, and news for the next episode as this develops, breaking news that both Jenna Ellis and Boris Epshteyn have pled not guilty in Arizona. So
Yep.
I'm hoping, eagerly waiting to see Boris Epstein's booking photo. But yes, this entire crew, and again, it is all the same people. I do hope at some point that Jack Smith is well aware of this broad conspiracy, including all these people who keep showing up in the same names and the same people funding this fraudulent stop the steal activity, whether it is the fake electors overlapping with the people who are looking for the fake flaws in the voting systems and all the attorneys advising them with fake or fraudulent advice. It's all got the same core group of people. And I hope to see one day federal indictments coming out of Jack Smith of all these knuckleheads, because
it's being investigated, right? Because we reported last week that Michigan police officer who kept the Republicans out of the Michigan State House when they wanted to go in and sign their fraudulent certificate said that he was paid a visit 2 weeks ago by the FBI and U.S. prosecutors, federal prosecutors from D.C. So it's being either currently investigated or they're interviewing people to build their case in chief or to build their indictment, We'll see. But the investigation is still ongoing. I'm assuming they still have a grand jury impaneled. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's interesting, Jenna Ellis, to talk about what you just said about her pleading not guilty in Arizona. She cried on national television, pleading guilty and apologizing in Georgia. She's lost her law license for 3 years in Colorado. Why is she pleading not guilty in Arizona? That's really curious.
Yeah, I don't know. And I would think, again, it depends on the prosecutor. You would think, it depends. Sometimes you'll get, again, state varies, but at the federal level, it would depend on the case. Sometimes before charging, DOJ prosecutors might reach out to somebody and say, hey, do you have an attorney? You should get one. Or if they do, look, we're getting ready to charge a client. Are you interested in making a deal before we charge you? Or after being charged to try and, engage in some negotiation to get a plea agreement. So it's not clear to me, did Arizona not offer it or not want to say,
that
like,
must
look,
be
you
it,
can,
right? Like,
you can plead guilty or not guilty, but we're not going to cut a deal. I don't know.
Maybe they were like, we don't need your testimony. You're useless to us. You were part of this crime.
Your option to plead guilty or we'll prosecute you.
Right.
So.
It just seems weird that you'd plead in one and not you already debased yourself as a criminal in front of the world with your weird, sad apology letter. I don't know. It just seems like I haven't run into the situation where somebody is being prosecuted for the same crime in sovereign states and their plea contradicts what they've already said in a different jurisdiction. So maybe it's something different in the charging. I don't know. I'll have to look into it. It just seems odd to me. I feel like you shouldn't get to say you're not guilty in Arizona, but guilty in Georgia. It's just weird. Okay. Anyway, we'll figure it out and we'll look into it. I'm sure we'll learn more as the case unfolds. But we do have to take one. Actually, we have 2 more segments coming up. And in the next one, we're going to talk about what the House Ethics Committee is looking into around the very wonderful and polite and super great to be around, I hear, Nancy Mace. So stick around. We'll be right back. Everybody, welcome back. We have more patrons to thank, including Jeffrey Vargas, Michelle Mihalek, Stacey Wells, Chris Barron, Rick Cedarwall, Emily Mosry, Deborah Broom, and Lucy Willard. So, as I was saying, Pete, a story that went under the radar from the New York Times this past week, the House Ethics Committee has begun review. They're busy, by the way. There's a busy little body, the House Ethics Committee, because apparently there's a lot of unethical people in the House of Representatives. But they have begun reviewing Representative Nancy Mace's use of a reimbursement program for lodging and other expenses of Congress members working in Washington. And that's according to a committee member. So, when you're a House member and you have to travel or come back to Washington for a few days from your district to vote on some stuff or whatever it is, there's a reimbursement program that you can take advantage of for that travel, for those needs. So following a complaint, lawmakers are being asked to look into whether Miss Mace, Republican of South Carolina, overcharged the program by thousands of dollars for expenses related to her Washington townhouse. This is according to the lawmaker familiar with the preliminary inquiry, who obviously spoke on the condition of anonymity. The full committee will consider the details of the complaint over the coming days. The committee has not taken a vote to authorize the investigation yet, but a change to House rules that went into effect last year allows members to be repaid for costs of lodging and food while they're on official business in Washington, they cap it at $34,000 a year. Now, lawmakers are not required to submit receipts, but they're strongly encouraged to keep them for their records. And according to the latest report by the Committee on House Administration, Nancy Mace was repaid more than $23,000 in lodging costs in 2023, so she's not at the limit. But documents reviewed by the New York Times showed that amount included expenses for insurance, taxes, and other monthly bills related to her own townhouse. And lawmakers who own homes in the Washington area may not seek reimbursement for mortgage payments. Under the program, lawmakers may only request reimbursement for their portion of housing costs incurred while in D.C. But according to the deed of her home and the person familiar, she is a partial owner of the home with her former fiancé and would not be permitted to seek repayment for the full costs associated with the shared home. So, big shocker. We have a Republican in Congress, super nice, peach of a person, Nancy Mace, who is lying to steal taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I wonder if she'll, given her past record of like getting up in front of the National Prayer Breakfast crowd and talking about how she was almost late because whoever she was dating was trying to like get a little action before she walked out the door.
Oh my
Literally
God, that's right.
telling
that
story to the assembled group of the National Prayer Breakfast. Perhaps she'll tell a story in front of like the National Association of Certified Public Accountants. She can talk about like how she's, kicking in the money on the townhouse she owns by covering it and claiming it's,
it's
for
her
utilities
and her fiancés. They own it together. Maybe this is where the alleged nookie took place that she talked about.
Don't stop. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to think about that.
Can't unsee. Can't unsee.
Wash your mouth out.
Sorry, my friend. It'll be interesting. I mean, like I said, House Ethics Committee has their plate a little full right now, mostly with Matt Gaetz, which we'll go into in detail on the Daily Beans, and we'll probably talk about it as more information comes out on the weekend's bonus episode for patrons. But that's a busy little group there.
Yeah, it is. And, Gaetz, who cannot seem to dodge what seems to me the truth of his trafficking of minors in a sexual context is, still not out of the woods when it comes to the Ethics Committee. But I have no expectation that there will be any finding whatsoever. But, hey, just the fact that it's still around there is still smoke that does not ever seem to go away. And speaking of smoke that never seems to go away, let's talk about the bankruptcy twins, Alex Jones and Rudy. Now, first, we spoke about this on the bonus episode for patrons the past weekend. We know a judge has ordered Alex Jones to liquidate his assets. Now, that means he goes from Chapter 11 bankruptcy into Chapter 7 liquidation. And for those who say Alex Jones is being wronged, please note that it was Jones himself that asked for the liquidation. The judge simply granted that. There will be a trustee that will be in charge of selling off what he owns, including his $2.8 million Texas ranch and InfoWars, so the money can be given to the families of the Sandy Hook shooting victims. But don't forget, Rudy Giuliani has also filed for bankruptcy since he lost a defamation suit brought by Georgia election worker Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss to the tune of $148 million. Rudy has agreed to a permanent order barring him from mentioning their names, but the $148 million payment is on hold pending the bankruptcy filing. And now, the Daily Beast writes, disgraced former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani has a quote-unquote lung disease that may have been caused by his time in Lower Manhattan immediately after the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, his lawyers said in a court filing earlier this week, according to the New York Post. Giuliani is seeking to retain control of his finances amid bankruptcy proceedings, with his lawyers claiming that the 80-year-old has a quote-unquote limited earning potential as a result of his deteriorating health. Quote, Giuliani is suffering from possible 9/11 lung disease and his future earning capacity is limited both by his age and future health, unquote. The filing submitted Monday reads. The one-time personal lawyer for Donald Trump owes a steep $148 million in damages incurred after he was found liable for defamation against a pair of Georgia election workers he falsely claimed were part of a conspiracy to commit voter fraud and throw the state's 2020 election. Giuliani filed for bankruptcy in December 2023, concludes the article. Now, here's something. Perhaps that lung disease, and, I know people who responded and now people who have passed away from their exposure to both airborne chemicals and carcinogens at both the downtown New York, the Twin Towers, as well as the Pentagon responding there. Rudy Giuliani, cigar a day, all the photos we have him at the Havana Club in Manhattan at his age with his lifestyle, it strikes me as a wildly convenient excuse. And he sure looked great at his birthday celebration right before he got served. And the other thing, the quote that his limited earning potential is a result of his deteriorating health and his earning capacity, it's not limited by his age and future health. It's limited by his recidivism as a criminal defendant and his association with the worst president in the history of our nation. That's what is causing his loss of earning potential and his disbarment and his continued ongoing indictments in what
Kicked
do we
off
have now?
WABC.
Yes, it has nothing to do with his health or lung disease. It has entirely to do with the content of his character and his behavior that is limiting his future potential. But he can, keep making some cameo videos, doing the little teapot reading.
We should ask for one. We should
ask for one. Maybe, your birthday to Allison. I will start composing.
We should pay him $200 to read the commissary list at
for the bonus for the patrons. Yes, this is my favorite part of cleanup on aisle 45 is when we get to go to a new federal correctional institution that one of the people surrounding Trump has been incarcerated at and do a select reading of the products available. In this case, from Danbury FCI, which is where Steve Bannon is headed. Coincidentally, a shockingly broad and exhaustive list of hair and skincare products, but I figure he has not used them up until this point in his life. Why start now? Why start in jail?
Now? Unless that's something that, some people find Jesus in prison. Some people start weightlifting in prison. Some people learn basketball. Maybe he'll start hygiene.
Get some scruffing regimen to some peels, get a little retinol, wash that hair, get a comb.
Just hygiene in general. Maybe go down to two shirts.
Drag a razor across his face. Oh, we're coming. They have two t-shirts, like medium through 2XL is a certain price. If you have to go 3 to 5XL, it jumps to $19.50. I'm all over it. I cannot wait to read it. We'll see, but maybe we do that on the bonus to plumb the depths of what he has available.
Maybe you'll give us a tiny little
taste,
a little more of a tease in the next.
The first taste is free, and then you gotta first taste is free, and then you gotta pay for the bonus.
Free,
we can do that.
Before we move on to the next segment, before we talk about Steve and all that stuff, I wanted to say that I've read some a pretty interesting takes on the Alex Jones liquidation, and I think that we're being played a little bit by Alex Jones in when he cried about his ranch and
shocked to hear that might be the case.
I think it's a little Kyle Rittenhousey. I think those were crocodile tears, and here's why: he liquidates his assets right now after unloading a bunch of stuff to FSS, which is his father's company. Has to sell his $2.8 million ranch and hand that money over. Has to sell InfoWars, which can't be that expensive. I think we should all get together and buy it and turn it into like a pro-choice network all day. But maybe $1.5 million, something like that. So you're looking at under $5 million. He's going to get away with paying these Sandy Hook families $5 million, $10 million bucks, when he owes them $1.5 billion. And the sad part is, and this is what made it very difficult for the judge to make this call. Like he almost had tears in his eyes when he had to do this, because the liquidation was requested by Alex Jones, and the judge reluctantly granted it, but it was the only way to get some people paid. But it pitted the Texas plaintiffs against the Connecticut plaintiffs, because one of the two had a huge settlement, like over $1 billion, and the other one was, I think it was Texas, was limited by Texas law to, a much lower award, because they have a maximum there. I think that's correct. Again, this is off the top of my head, and so they're going to only see a tiny percentage. That group of plaintiffs is only going to see a tiny percentage of the whole liquidation. And so we're talking pittance when you sell off InfoWars and his ranch, liquidate his assets, and give the bulk of it to the larger suit winner, the group of plaintiffs that won the larger award. And so that, of course, the group that got the smaller award is arguing, no liquidation. Alex Jones is like, yes, liquidation. And Alex Jones won. And so he's going to get away with paying very little. And as far as going after him for his future assets, he's just going to work for his father and who's going to pay him $1 a year, and so there won't be any future assets. He's kind of an untouchable plaintiff at this point because of the liquidation. So I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to put that out there. This isn't a win, I think, for the families of the victims of the school shooting. I don't think it is. I think it's a win for Alex Jones. We saw him put a video out where Donald Trump gave me this new Cybertruck. Oh my God. Thanks, Tesla. Thanks, Donald Trump. And it probably gave it to his father's company, so he doesn't have to liquidate it. It's a scam, and it's unfortunate.
That is, though, so on brand for everybody in and around Trump world. I think you're probably exactly right. And hopefully the attorneys have some good asset tracking folks who can see through it. And if there's something they can attach to or call a foul on, they can do it. But I think you're right, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. We have a few more stories to get to. We have a lightning round that we're going to do as soon as we get back from this quick break. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Here's our last set of new patrons to thank. Jude, Laurie Hardy, Lorna Robertshaw, Maverick and 068, Non Ferris, Rain McGeorge, Helen Clark, and Geriatric Punk, Your Cool Mom. Thank all of you so much. Thank you. Thank you for signing up. Thank you for being part of the team. Thank you for letting and allowing us to put all this together for you every week. And so with that, let's jump into the lightning round. First, Steve Bannon files an emergency request at the D.C. Circuit, asking them to prevent him from having to report to prison on July 1st, just weeks away, for his contempt of Congress conviction. Quote, Appellant Stephen K. Bannon seeks release pending further appeal of his convictions in this case. Given his surrender date of July 1, 2024, he respectfully requests a ruling by June 18th, today as we're taping, 2024, to allow sufficient time to seek further relief from the Supreme Court if necessary. As a Pete aside here right now, generally you don't sit there saying, hey, I'm in here late. This is coming up, Court of Appeals, so do me a solid. I'm going to give you a few days. Can you give me an answer by Tuesday, today, June 18th? That's not the way this works, and the arrogance of doing that. It's not like I'm on death row. Please, commute my sentence, or at least let me give you a filing to prevent it from that. It's not where we're at. Anyway, it continues. Back to Bannon's filing. This is a landmark case. The prosecution pursued a novel and aggressive theory of liability, and the case garnered international attention. If the panel decision stands, there will be far-reaching consequences, including separation of powers concerns. Before the prosecution of Mr. Bannon, it had been 50 years since the government convinced a jury to convict someone for not adequately responding to a congressional subpoena. And there has certainly been no shortage of disputes over congressional subpoenas during that time. Mr. Bannon intends to vigorously pursue his remaining appeals in this case and has retained experienced Supreme Court counsel. In the meantime, he asked this court to allow him to remain on release. And then the government turned around and responded on Monday. Quote, Bannon's release motion should be denied. Release pending appeal is the exception to the general rule that a defendant shall be detained following a conviction and imposition of a sentence of imprisonment. Release after an appellate panel has ruled against the defendant would be all the more extraordinary. Bannon cannot meet the legal standard to justify his release. So, Allison, there's just, in my opinion, slim to no chance that this will be granted. He will, I am certain, then take it up to the Supreme Court. And just like we saw with Peter Navarro trying to stay out of jail, it will be summarily decided, which brings us then, if it is denied and he has to show up on July the 1st, the items as he rolls into FCI Danbury and looks at his account and what he might buy at the commissary list. This, again, dear listeners, you can find on the BOP.gov website. You can go and search any federal correctional institution, and they will publish typically their commissary list. And this is FCI Danbury from 2023. It is the most recent. But Steve, if he goes, and starting with underwear, medium to 2XL, $11.70 a pair. But if you are 3X and up, the price jumps to $19.50. Substantial. If you want a short sleeve t-shirt, and again, he wears 3, so you got to multiply this by 3, $6.50, or for a long sleeve shirt, $10.40. He has a wide variety of mesh hats, mesh shorts, mesh, but grooming aids, brush comb combo for the first time in his life, a toenail clipper, some tweezers, nose scissors for $6.70, a pumice stone. Gonna need about 5 or 6 of those if you're going to start diving into that, but $1.90 will get you one. You can get a thin hair tie for $1.25, or a thick, CK, not CC, thick hair tie for $3.25. There's a choice of shampoo: VO5, Suave, Pantene, Dandruff, Shoulders, Head and Shoulders, Trisame, and Whole Blends, ranging $1.85 for the VO5 all the way up to $8.90 for the Head and Shoulders.
No salon selectives, huh?
What's interesting to me, it seems like quite a bargain. Lotion and skincare is extensive. Tone Cocoa Butter Lotion, Suave Hydro Lotion, Suave Cocoa Lotion, Ambi Complexion Soap, St. Ives Collagen Face, Noxema Face Wash, again, double up on those, Petroleum Jelly, Baby Powder, Hot 6 Oil, Curel, St. Ives, this is like a Target, St. Ives Apricot Scrub, Jergens Weightless, Aveeno at $15.25, an outlier in price. But the bargain I thought was a Neutrogena bar for $3.65.
That's a good price.
Seems like a bargain. If he wants to, be a bit multi-ethnic, he can get some chorizo beans. He can get some halal / kosher meals.
You can get beans in prison?
He can get chorizo beans for $2.80. This is under produce. This is the produce section. You're like, oh, produce. Yeah, great. Lettuce, some tomato. No. Produce, a garlic pickle, 85 cents. A hot and spicy pickle, also 85 cents. Hot pepper mix, $2.55. Refried beans, $2.20. Chorizo beans, $2.80. Olive salad, $3.20. And what I'm certain, I hope this is constantly on Steve Bannon's mind, and I'm surprised at the progressiveness of BOP. There is a transgender section with a note that this must be confirmed, where he can buy, although prices are not listed, blush, body wash, a claw hair clip, cotton balls, women's deodorant, ethnic hair shampoo, whatever that brand is, eyeshadow, foam hair rollers, foundation, hair pick, lip gloss, women's lotion, women's underwear, Q-tips, women's razors, shoes, socks, sports bra, and watch. So I am the potential for the aggravation of Steve Bannon.
Well, first of all, that's awesome. But second of all, I bet that comes up in Comer's investigation into the politicization of the Bureau of Prisons.
We will hear, yes, Lauren Boebert or MTG will be down there screaming about why are we subsidizing? Why is BOP providing women's underwear for transgender prisoners? Because, why not try and exercise a little bit of humanity and decency by
but they're absolute trolls, and they we'll definitely hear about it, I'm sure.
Just Steve can buy a bunch of nacho cheese Doritos for $2.65. Could read this all day.
You get the Dorito dust all over your hands, then you can get the Neutrogena soap to clean it.
Exactly.
All right, something we've been asking for a very long time on this show, since I think before you joined us, Pete, on Cleanup on Aisle 45, to expand the federal bench of judges. Now, this isn't the Supreme Court. I want that. I want there to be 13 Supreme Court justices, but this is a bill to expand the federal bench. The Senate Judiciary Committee has advanced a bipartisan bill to create 66 new federal district court judgeships to meet workload demands, including in California, Delaware, and Texas, which, if enacted, would be the first major expansion of the judiciary in over 3 decades. The U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee voted 20-0 to send the bill. It opens a new tab designed to fulfill longstanding requests from the judiciary to help address rising caseloads by adding judges in 25 district courts nationwide. And it's going to go now to the full Senate for consideration. But given there's almost 900 federal judges, we were calling on Cleanup Aisle 45 to double the federal bench. We're not getting 900 more judges. We're getting 66, but it is an expansion. I welcome it. I'm surprised we're not expanding the DC bench, given what happened to January 6th. But maybe they're like, was a one-time thing. I'm not so sure. There are future coup plotters in our midst right now, and those coups are likely to take place in the Capitol. But, again, I'll take what I can get.
Yeah, I think this would be great. I don't think procedurally it is going to get passed until certainly not fast enough so that Biden can send it or sign it into law and immediately kick out, 66 more nominees to be confirmed by the Democrat-controlled Senate Judiciary Committee. I suspect the
Republicans are going to block this for that reason only.
And I can see them wait and see what happens in November, and all of a sudden, if Biden gets reelected, the bipartisanship evaporates. So
it will.
I hope this goes through. It needs to. It is woefully overdue, but I'm not holding my breath, unfortunately. And so with that, continuing on the lightning round, let's go back up north to Wisconsin, where the Wisconsin Supreme Court on Tuesday suspended former President Donald Trump's Wisconsin lawyer. There's a theme here, Allison. Suspended Trump's Wisconsin lawyer from a state judicial ethics panel a week after he was charged with a felony for his role in a 2020 fake elector scheme.
What's the theme? Is it Trump lawyers being indicted, or is it Trump lawyers being kicked off of things? Be disbarred?
All of it. Just Trump lawyers bad. Trump lawyers getting indicted. Trump lawyers having booking photos taken. Trump lawyers entering pleas. Trump lawyers just on the wrong side of the law. And not
as
just
I've always said, Mar-a-Lago is a magical place where people enter as lawyers and leave as witnesses.
or convicted.
Or inmates.
Or inmates, yes.
Where usually disbarred.
Yeah, get their chorizo and beans. So liberal advocates have been calling for Jim Trupus to step down from the judicial conduct.
Sorry to interrupt. We should have the Daily Beans show fund, have a little fund for
prison beans. Prison beans from the Daily Beans. You can do that.
And we could give a little sticker and a mug and a Super Space Beans mug. Listen to the Daily Beans.
It's prison beans from and you can write and we can go out and find I'm sure again listeners, if we have any listeners in or around the BOP system, and you can get us the actual brand, maybe even merch or get a gift thing of prison beans from the Daily Beans for your friends. Anyway, there's because there's so many. Anyway, something for the bonus later. I told you we'd tease you. First taste is free. Next, if you want more, you got to pay. So, liberal advocates, again, have been calling for Jim Trupus to step down from the Judicial Conduct Advisory Committee, saying he is unsuitable due to his role advising the Republicans who attempted to cast Wisconsin's electoral votes for Trump after he lost the 2020 election in the state of Wisconsin to Democrat Joe Biden. Trupus, who happens to be a former judge.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either, but insane. Oh, sorry. It's insane. Swearing also a feature of the bonus for patrons. So Ken Chesebro as well, another Trump attorney, and former Trump aide Mike Roman were all charged by State Attorney General Josh Kaul last week for their role in the fake electors plot. Surprisingly, Trupus did not return a voicemail or a text message seeking comment on Tuesday.
Again, Josh Kaul, Mike Roman is watching you. Be careful. New York City Department of Probation officials have questioned former President Donald Trump about an additional gun that had been registered to him in New York and his access to firearms as part of their pre-sentencing interview. That was the probation interview. That's according to a city official. And the former president, as we know, was convicted on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records to interfere in an election. Possession of firearms or ammunition by a convicted felon is a federal crime. Now, according to the official, Trump said there was a gun in Florida, which is believed to be one of 3 weapons listed in his New York City permit to carry concealed weapons. Trump has a concealed carry permit. I can't imagine him
for his wee little pistol for his wee tiny hands.
He can't reach the... he can't. That's why he wants bump stocks back, is because he can't reach the trigger. Anyway, CNN, this is CNN reporting. They previously reported 2 of the 3 pistols he was licensed to carry were turned over to the NYPD in March of 2023. A third gun listed on Trump's license was lawfully moved to Florida. Now, contacted by CNN last week, Palm Beach police said they were unaware of any gun that Trump might have had and that none had been turned over to the department since his felony conviction. Oops. Trump's New York gun license was suspended after his arrest in 2023 by the Manhattan DA's office, and now as a result of his conviction, his license is being revoked. That's according to New York City Police. A New York official briefed on the probation investigation said the information on the outstanding gun, quote, will be referred to local authorities in Florida to take whatever steps necessary. I think this is the Trump 45 gold handgun that one armory made
although
for him.
I wonder, because that was, I thought that came up in the context of his visiting a store fairly recently, and they gave it to him as a gift, and he was at first accepted it, and then everybody was like in Twitter saying, wait a minute, you've been indicted, you can't have that, and then like the campaign went into overdrive saying, oh, he didn't take it, he just returned it. So I think that might have been that. This strikes me as something that he had way back,
unless this was the one that was moved to Florida from New York. But regardless, right. He admitted to having a gun in Florida. I don't think that he'll be charged with a crime for that. But it is interesting that I think some of his bail conditions, the fact that he's out on bail, say that he can't have access to a firearm. So that's really interesting.
Right.
And we'll see. I know Ryan Goodlaw was talking about that on social media. So it will be interesting to see if anything comes of this. I doubt it will, because he's not Hunter Biden, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, get David Weiss to look into this and the, what sort of gun procedures, administrative procedures weren't followed, and lock him up. Lock him up. Not going to happen. I would hope only the Florida authorities will say, look, media isn't going to stop asking about this.
Just hand it over.
Would love to let you keep it, but just hand it over, and I suspect he will. But again, what Trump trying to shoot a gun? Jon Stewart last night did we're taping on Tuesday, so I think this is Monday night, did a remarkable little montage of Trump, the noises he thinks guns make, and he says, "Oh, these big men with guns," and they go ping pong. I mean, it's just like no, those are not the sounds guns make in any conceivable world, but it's Trump's world where he's shooting his gun at the shark from the sinking electric boat.
Watch out for sharks.
Mm.
Did you? Oh, there's so many great cartoons, by the way, about that right now. A shark sitting on a witness stand asking to be electrocuted.
Rather than have Trump.
Oh, man. All right. Well, that is our show. Thank you so much to all of our new patrons. And thanks to everyone who listens. If there's someone in your life who is maybe an undecided voter, which is weird to me, but they exist, send them a link to clean up on I-45. Say, hey, this is an ex-FBI guy, and what am I? Former comedian? Oh, I worked at the government. Former government employee. Talking about all the cases against Donald Trump and how we can clean up our justice system and our federal judiciary. And if anybody has any ideas how we can clean up the Supreme Court, please let us know, and we will put the word out, because it seems like we have a bit of a legitimacy crisis, a little bit of corruption happening in our top court. And I honestly feel pretty helpless to stop it. So if you have any ideas, please send them to us. And if you want to become a patron, I think it's as little as $1 an episode, right? At $2, you get a whole second episode every week. You get twice as many episodes, a full episode on the weekends for you. And you can do that at patreon.com/aisle45pod, AISLE45POD. Pete, do you have any final thoughts today?
Do, and added bonus, if you subscribe now this weekend, you can hear how much Steve Bannon will have to pay to get a chicken pouch, spice it up with a little Goya adobo, and have a hot tea bag, and get your minds out of the gutter.
That sounds dirty.
That's not. I'm literally talking. He can buy a hot tea bag, and now you can hear how much he's going to have to pay for that in a few weeks' time.
Okay.
Allison, I'm reading from the list. It says hot tea bag. I thought that was free.
Okay, everyone. We'll see you this weekend, patrons, and we'll see you next week. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening. I've been Allison Gill.
And I'm Pete Strzok.
No, you're Hot Tea Bag. That's your new name. See you next week. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is written, researched, and produced by Allison Gill, with editing by Molly Hockey. Our art and logo design are by Joelle Reeder and Moxie Design Studios, and our music is composed and performed by Adam Orr. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.